And on with our presentation. Jennifer Evans is a prescribed fire extension assistant at North Carolina State University, where she provides prescribed fire education and outreach throughout the Southeast as a member of the Southeast Regional Partnership for Planning Sustainability, SSAS, Prescribed Fire Working Group. Prior to her role at NC State, she worked as an ecologist in Florida and assisted in data collection in longleaf ecosystems as a biological technician with the U.S. Forest Service. She has a master's in forest resources from Clemson University, where she researched the effects of southern pine beetle outbreaks on wildland fire behavior. So welcome, and let's all welcome Jen as she gives her presentation today. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, David. I hope everybody can hear me okay. And good afternoon to everyone. Today I'll be talking about a newly developed smoke management curriculum for the Southeast United States. And today's webinar is going to be a Train the Trainer event. So this presentation is really going to be best suited for county extension agents, NRCS agents, state forestry, county rangers, or anyone else who may work with landowners or consultants on prescribed fire issues. However, even if you don't fall necessarily into one of these categories, or maybe you are a landowner or consultant yourself, you'll probably still find this presentation useful though, because the curriculum that I'm going to be describing is actually available online for free to the general public. So this is an overview of what I'll be covering today. I'm just going to start with an overview of what the curriculum actually is and what it will include. The final curriculum will include a PowerPoint presentation, sample exercises, case studies, and tools and resources such as mobile apps, fact sheets, videos, and quizzes. Due to time constraints on today's webinar, we won't be going into as much depth as to what the actual presentation portion of the curriculum will entail, but I'll try to touch on some of the important highlights. And then it's going to be posted online over the next couple of weeks, and you'll be able to see the entire curriculum and have access to the full presentation. But today I will be including some ideas for exercises and case studies that you could use in your course, as well as providing you with some available tools and resources. And then I hope to be able to leave a few minutes at the end for questions also. So the goal of this project was to develop an online training course on prescribed fire for the Southeast, allowing students to learn in a convenient manner and also at their own pace. And one component of this course is smoke management. In the future, other curriculum will also include prescribed fire liability, fire safety, and prescribed burning for landowners new to longleaf pine. Some objectives of the curriculum are to educate prescribed burners and other students on smoke management, especially those who may be new to burning. And we want to share existing tools and resources. There's a lot of excellent resources out there already that people might not know about. And these could be useful for new burners as well as those who've maybe been burning for 20 years, but they may not know about some of the new tools and technology that are now available. Another objective is to provide best smoke management practices. Many resources are available that provide this information, so we want to capture those best practices and then include them within this course. Although prescribed burning helps to achieve multiple goals, it still pollutes the air. All of the states in the Southeast have developed smoke management programs, which are designed to help limit potential smoke problems by establishing procedures and requirements for managing prescribed fire with the goal of balancing prescribed fire, but also while maintaining clean air. So most of the states currently offer their own certified prescribed burner courses and follow their respective state management guidelines. But since both the smoke from fire and also the prescribed burners themselves, they often cross state lines. So the Southeast Partnership for Planning and Sustainability, or SSAS, the Prescribed Fire Work Group, saw this as an opportunity to create a cohesive, integrated curriculum that combines all of the states on best smoke management practices. Once the state's curriculum was integrated into one cohesive model, we wanted to make it available online to everyone and promote the curriculum as an opportunity for an introductory and/or a refresher training, primarily for landowners, consultants, and those new to fire, but really for anybody. I do want to note that this training is not intended to, it is intended to be an introductory course, but is not in any way meant to take the place of a state certification course, a workshop, or field experience. but it can be used either as a precursor or in conjunction with one of those things. And the hope is that after taking this course, participants will want to continue on to either become certified burners themselves or at least feel comfortable enough with prescribed fire to allow someone else to apply it to their land. So as of this week, with the help of John Weir and Dwayne Hunter at Oklahoma State University, the course is now available on the eExtension website at campus.extension.org. What you'll need to do is go ahead, go to the website and register, and you can create an account. It's free. And then you can either go to the Energy and Environment section, click on that, and then search for Southeastern Prescribed Fire Training. Or if any of you are listening in from the Midwest, you can type prescribed fire into the search box, and 3 courses will show up. The first of which is called Basic Prescribed Fire Training, which is taught by John Weir at Oklahoma State University. There's also an Introduction to Prescribed Rangeland Burning, and then this course, which is Southeastern Prescribed Fire Training. So the 2 other courses, the Basic Prescribed Fire and the Intro to Rangeland Burning, are more geared towards the Midwestern states that primarily burn on rangelands. Whereas this course, the Southeastern Prescribed Training, is designed more for those of us who burn primarily in forested habitats in the Southeast. And you can also find a link to this course on the NC State University Extension page at go.ncsu.edu/rxfire. As the way the course stands right now, there's 8 sections, and then at the end there's a wrap-up section where participants have the option to print a certificate of completion. The 8 sections that are currently included are an introduction to prescribed fire, laws and liability, fire prescriptions, fire effects, fire breaks, ignition techniques, smoke management, and best time of year to burn. Some of that information that's currently part of this course was provided by John Weir, and so is geared a little bit more towards rangeland burning. So our goal over the next few months is to replace some of that information with information that's more specific to the Southeast, and then we also plan to add an additional section on fire safety. The smoke management section is currently in the process of becoming more Southeastern, and much of the information that is on there right now is in fact the Southeastern information. So why is this course being taught? Why is smoke management important? Well, today's webinar is really going to focus on section 7 of that curriculum that I just showed you, which is smoke management. And one of the reasons that this curriculum was created is because there's need for more prescribed fire in the landscape, but several factors are preventing this from happening, including smoke. The National Association of State Foresters and the Coalition of Prescribed Fire Councils conducted a survey in 2012 to identify the top impediments to burning and publish their results in the National Prescribed Fire Use Survey report. The results of this survey show that both nationally and in the Southeast, smoke management and air quality issues rank very high at 3rd. And so the continued and increased use of prescribed fire may depend on effective smoke and emission mitigation practices. Depending on your job duties, when using this curriculum, your audience could include certified burners who maybe want a refresher course. Some states don't require refresher courses once you become certified, so this course could assist with that. Your audience could also maybe include non-certified burners who are already burning but are thinking of becoming state certified burners, or maybe landowners who are considering burning their own land or hiring someone to burn their land, but they might need some more information before they make that decision. Also forestry consultants or agency or NGO personnel. But many of the state and federal agencies that burn actually already have their own training courses though. So this particular course may not necessarily be applicable to them since it doesn't follow the National Wildland Fire Coordinating Group or the NWCG standards. The trainer's guide will include a course introduction for those who are going to be teaching the curriculum, a presentation with slides containing the course material, exercises where participants can apply what they're learning, fact sheets with relevant information, suggestions for how to include case studies, and related videos and other associated tools and resources. We're currently in the process of working with a distance education team here at NC State to create educational videos about prescribed fire. And so once those complete, hopefully by this summer, those will be housed here as well. And those videos will include an introduction to burning. So why conduct a burn, who conducts a burn, what resources are available. also planning the burn, conducting the burn, and then evaluating the burn afterwards, whether your burn objectives met or not. When comparing the smoke management guidelines from each of the states, these are some of the main topics that were included throughout all of them. And when the PowerPoint presentation portion of the smoke management curriculum is complete in a few weeks, it'll include information about all of these topics in detail, and that'll be uploaded into the course curriculum. Today's webinar will touch on some of these, but the actual curriculum presentation will go into much more detail. During this curriculum, we want students to understand why smoke management is such an important part of prescribed burning. Smoke is a natural source of air pollution, but smoke production from fires is a serious land management consideration because it can affect public and firefighter health, impair visibility for road and air traffic, can damage property, it can become a nuisance, and it can contribute to air pollution in populated areas that are regulated by EPA air quality standards. Air quality impacts from smoke have become a considerable public health concern, which requires stricter air quality management. And therefore, smoke management is now playing a larger role in prescribed fire operations, both at the agency level and a local level. If you want to know more about what sorts of smoke management are being used at the federal level, the U.S. Forest Service has a YouTube series of about 6 short videos about their efforts for smoke management, and they call this series Minimizing Smoke Impacts of Prescribed Fire. So you could go to YouTube and watch those videos if you'd like. Although prescribed burning does create smoke, it can also be a means of protecting air quality by mitigating the occurrence of large wildfires. Large wildfires can generate a much larger volume of smoke than prescribed fires and can affect communities for longer periods of time. So if the public perceive the risk of prescribed burning to be too great, there could be pressure to eliminate fire from the landscape. So we really want to make sure that the public not only understands burning, but also accepts and supports it. If you haven't seen this month's, actually it was from January, the Joint Fire Science Program's Fire Science Digest. It covers building trust, establishing credibility, and communicating fire issues with the public. And I put the link along the bottom there in case anybody wanted to look at it. But the article says that when trust and confidence have been established with the public, managers can enjoy strong support of fire and fuels management programs, even in some of the most challenging communities. And I think smoke management plays a large role in establishing this trust. I really like this picture that I included here. It's from Doug Volutina, who's a land manager in Florida. Because in this picture, you can see the retirement community to the right, but all of the smoke is blowing in the complete opposite direction. And Steve Miller did a presentation about this a while back, which is available actually on the Southern Fire Exchange website as an archived webinar. And he called it Burning in Their Backyards and Having Them Say Thank You. So not only were there no complaints about this burn, but the people who lived in the retirement community actually drove their golf carts to the edge of the burn and were watching the burn as a source of entertainment for the day, and then afterwards thanked the land managers for burning it. So having burns like this where smoke isn't a problem actually builds trust and leads to fewer complaints and will allow us to continue burning in the future. Emissions from wildland fires are subject to laws, regulations, and policies at state and national levels because of the types of pollutants contained in smoke. The major components of smoke are water vapor and carbon dioxide. However, smoke also contains carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, hydrocarbons, and particulate matter. The legal foundation of smoke management is the Clean Air Act, which establishes primary and secondary standards for controlling air pollution. Primary standards would be public health, and secondary standards would be human welfare and environmental quality. The Act also requires the EPA, or the Environmental Protection Agency, to set national ambient air quality standards to control pollution and protect public health, safety, and welfare. Ambient air quality worse than the national ambient air quality standard is used as the principal indicator of public health impacts, whereas visibility impairment is used as the principal indicator of public welfare impacts. So fire produces smoke which contains particulate matter, ozone precursors, greenhouse gases, and other trace gases. I'm not going to go into too much detail of that part of it today, but particulate matter, specifically PM 2.5, is a major component of smoke from vegetation. Materials of the size PM 2.5 are of so much concern because they're small enough to work their way into the human lungs. And according to the EPA, pollutants from smoke are most concerned to children, older adults, and people with heart or lung disease. Also, the diameter of PM 2.5 is close to the wavelength of visible light, so it's really effective at scattering visible light, which is why it's hard to see through smoke and could affect roadways and travel. PM 2.5 includes all matter in the air, which is 2.5 microns in diameter or less. To put this into perspective, it's about 30 times less than the diameter of a strand of hair, so it's very small. The Clean Air Act establishes state-level responsibilities for preventing and controlling air pollution. So many of the specific requirements for smoke management are actually found in the state smoke management plans. The EPA doesn't directly regulate the use of fire within a state, but their authority is to enforce the requirements of the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act requires that states and tribes attain and maintain the national ambient air quality standards adopted to protect public health and air and welfare. The EPA has a policy called the Interim Policy on Wildland and Prescribed Fires. If you haven't seen this yet, I suggest you look it up. It mitigates the public health and welfare impacts of prescribed fires, and the policy has a goal to allow fire to function as nearly as possible anyway in its natural role in maintaining healthy and wildland ecosystems, but also to protect public health and welfare by mitigating the impacts of air pollutant on air quality and visibility. So this kind of explains why smoke management is such an important part of prescribed burning. Several pollutants are emitted during burning. They're all of concern, but the largest amount of material that's emitted from burn that's a regulated air pollutant is particulate matter. And so many strategies have been developed to address that particular pollutant. In 2012, the EPA strengthened the annual national ambient air quality standards from 15 to 12 micrograms per cubic meter. So earlier I mentioned that ambient air quality worse than the national ambient air quality standards is used as the principal indicator of public health impacts. This map was created by Rick Gillum with the EPA using the EPA's new online PM 2.5 designation mapping tool. And you can see that the current PM 2.5 non-attainment areas and ambient air monitors with the red dots are above the annual standard, and the blue dots are below the annual standard. So the areas with the red dots are areas where air quality from smoke are going to be of highest concern. Under the authority of the Clean Air Act, the EPA, as well as the state health agencies, are given the responsibility of public safety. So this is a list of all of the state health agencies in the Southeast and their websites where you can find their information. I don't expect you to memorize this. I just kind of included this slide to show you that each state does in fact have agencies that regulate air quality, and they provide information to the public on things such as air quality standards, emissions data, air quality index forecasts, and more. This is not an inclusive list, but many air quality resources are in fact available already. I mentioned that the EPA, the Interim Policy on Wildland and Prescribed Fires. Also, the Southern Fire Exchange has a fact sheet available on the health effects of wildland fire smoke that you can find on their website. The National Interagency Fire Center, NWCG Smoke Committee, has an emission page that contains all kinds of information on emissions and public health and safety, and I posted their link there. There's also, for those of you who may be a bit more tech savvy, there's a new mobile app from the EPA called Air Now. It's available on both Apple and Android, and it provides real-time air quality information that people can then use to protect their health when planning their daily activities. The app allows users to get location-specific reports on current air quality and air quality forecasts for both ozone and PM 2.5. And then on their website, air quality maps are available. You just go to www.airnow.gov is their website. And the maps provide visual depictions of current and forecasted air quality nationwide. And then also a page on air quality related health effects that explains what actions people can take to protect their health at these different air quality index levels. When best smoke management practices are applied on prescribed burns, they can mitigate the impacts of smoke to public health, public safety, and visibility. And with the ever-increasing population here in the Southeast, it's going to be imperative that smoke impacts are minimized for human health and safety. So when burning in close proximity to urban areas, there's less time for the atmosphere to disperse the smoke. In addition, there are certain non-attainment areas that have bad air quality, such as Atlanta, such as you just saw on the previous map. There's several things that can be done in order to minimize these impacts to air quality. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going into these today, but you can find more details for each of these on, there's a new Southern Fire Exchange fact sheet called Smoke Management Practices for Prescribed Burning, as well as in the original document, which is the Basic Smoke Management Practices from the U.S. Forest Service and the NRCS. While that document is not necessarily a comprehensive list of smoke management strategies, this guide describes 6 basic principles that are good starting points for prescribed fire planning and operations. Even though they may not apply to all burns, due to variations in size, fuels, and potential impacts on air quality, they still, each of the practices described should be evaluated for application on every burn, even if there's a local smoke management program in place. And the Southern Fire Exchange fact sheet kind of summarizes a lot of the key elements in that guide, but I would still encourage you to look at the full publication to better understand how to implement each of those practices. I also wanted to mention that Pete Lamb, who's a U.S. Forest Service Fire Weather and Air Quality Specialist, will be giving a webinar with the Southern Fire Exchange on April 2nd to discuss the development of these smoke management practices for prescribed burners and how they were established. Another document that's available is the Southeast Regional Partnership for Planning and Sustainability Smoke Management Recommendations that were developed by the SSAS Smoke Work Group. This document is available online, but it was also actually turned into a mobile app called the Smoke Management Pocket Guide, which is available at smokeapp.surpass.org. And this is not only this is actually a web app, so you can go to either on your computer or on your mobile device. And if you go to that, you'll see that it has many different applications that you can use to help with your smoke management. There's 12 smoke management practices that are included on this app from the SURPASS document, and they worked with the Coalition of Prescribed Fire Councils to create these 12 management practices. Just going through them quickly, the first one, understand and follow local, state, federal, and tribal fire laws and regulations. As I mentioned earlier, each state typically has their own laws and regulations, so you want to make sure that you look at each of those. Identify, map, and avoid impacting smoke-sensitive areas. I'll go over in a little bit what that actually will include. Match appropriate smoke screening tools to burn complexity. There are screening tools available, which I'll give to you in a few slides. Notify appropriate parties of intent to burn. The app gives you some suggestions of who those parties might be. Use a test fire to verify expected smoke dispersion. The app contains a video that was provided to us from the Prescribed Fire Training Center of how they conduct their test fire and what you're looking for with the test fire as it's being conducted. Number 6 is only burn when smoke conditions are favorable. And again, each of these, as you go through these 12 and you click on them on the app, they all provide more details and more resources within each of these guidelines. Number 7 is be aware of other burning activity and sources of pollution in your area. When feasible, use ignition patterns and methods which minimize smoke production. Monitor changing weather conditions and respond to unintended smoke impacts. Minimize impacts from smoldering smoke. In high smoke risk areas, explore alternative methods to burning. And finally, enhance smoke management skills through training and experience. And we're hoping that this course will help with that last one to enhance their skills by going through this course, particularly the smoke management model. Each of the states have their own smoke management guidelines, and these often need to be followed in order to maintain liability coverage for that state. So for example, in North Carolina, the 4th step in becoming a certified burner is to conduct the prescribed burn under North Carolina smoke management guidelines. following the plan while observed by a certified burner on site. So if you don't follow these guidelines, then you may not receive liability coverage if something were to happen. Many of the states are the same way. The guidelines are created to attempt to minimize smoke impacts to public health, public safety, nuisance, and visibility, and they're monitored by state air quality and also the EPA. Depending on the state, the guidelines may define smoke-sensitive areas, amounts of vegetative debris that may be burned, atmospheric conditions suitable for burning, and more. For the states which have voluntary guidelines, we want to make sure that these guidelines are followed in order for those guidelines to remain voluntary. This table is just here to show you that each state in the Southeast does in fact have their own set of guidelines. You can usually find these listed on the state forestry website. If not, you would have to go to the certified training course or maybe ask one of your county rangers or your state foresters for a copy of the smoke management guidelines. So during the curriculum, if you wanted to provide your students with a sample exercise to give them some hands-on learning, one idea that you could use is to give them a burn plan. This particular plan that I have shown here is from the North Carolina Forest Service. You could also check with your state Forest Service to see if they have a template that you could use. This is an example from the North Carolina Smoke Management Guidelines, as I said. But this one could also serve as a template for other states as well. It contains much of the same information. As you can see here, as part of the pre-burning planning, there's a smoke management section, and it asks you for the direction to the smoke-sensitive area and the distance to smoke-sensitive area, as well as wind direction and some other weather considerations. So if you have your template burn plan, you could give your students a case study and ask them to fill in this burn plan as they go along. To define what a smoke-sensitive area actually is, smoke-sensitive areas are areas within which, for reasons of visibility, health, or human welfare, smoke could adversely impact public safety. For example, interstates, highways, urban areas, airports, schools, hospitals. Some of them are a little less obvious, swine and poultry farms. There may be others here that you know are surrounding your property also that are outside of this list here. But when conducting your burn, you should consider all of your surroundings. Sometimes smoke can be mitigated. So for example, if you're burning on a Saturday and school's not in session, then you've mitigated the smoke to the next door to the elementary school. Or if you let your neighbor know that you're going to be burning tomorrow, perhaps she could go into town or visit a friend just so she's not in the house. If the poultry house is empty that day, then there's not going to be any chance of smoking the chickens in. Some of these may not be so obvious as I mentioned, but you should always think about where your surroundings are and which of these locations could be around you. And I'm going to show you now a sample exercise of how you can look at these on the map. You could use Google Earth is one way to find these smoke sensitive areas, but you still want to make sure that you ground truth. The maps could be old or abandoned houses could not still have tenants in them. So you always want to look at your surroundings, both aerial and on the ground. This is an example. You could pick any property, really. This is just one example that you could show to your students. You could pick, if you have something in your particular state or your area that you're actually going to be doing a live burn, then that could work also. So zooming in a little bit, you can see that there's a house there. And all I did was I typed in to Google Earth, and then I zoomed in, and I could see from the aerial that there is a house there. And so that would be an area, since it's within a half a mile of the burn unit, that's a half a mile radius there. You would want to check just to make sure that there are no tenants in that house, and if there are, that you speak to them before you conduct your burn. If you're having students work on this, you could zoom out a little bit further in Google. It's really easy. I just typed in nursing homes, and we had some pop up there. You see where there's a curve in the road there. You could put on your map an area where you want to put road signs, maybe along the road there, to mitigate some of the smoke for traffic in that area if it does happen to cross over into the road. Zooming out a little bit more, I also searched for hospitals, airports, schools, campgrounds. Google's really an easy way to do this, and you can put all of that right on your map and know exactly where your smoke sensitive areas are. And depending on your fuel load, you'll need to look at how far that smoke will actually disperse. And a lot of the smoke management guidelines will go into more detail about how exactly to go into that and how far to look out from your burn unit. Last week, Scott Goodrick gave a webinar on how to use V-Smoke. I had actually never used V-Smoke before, so I can tell you it is very simple to use. I used it right after his webinar for this particular stand, as you can see here. I just typed in the latitude and longitude, and then the number of acres, how long we expected the burn to go. And then looking at our site, we wanted to make sure that the smoke was going in the direction of the northeast, because that's where most of our smoke sensitive areas, there were very few in that direction. The other directions had more of them. So using V-Smoke, I was able to go in there and plot the information, and you can see that within the area, the smoke sensitive areas there from the V-Smoke output, it's not going to affect any of the smoke sensitive areas that we had on our map. So this is just an example of a really simple exercise that you could give to your students, and you could tailor it specifically for your burn if you did have a burn with your project. There are some smoke screening tools available. I have most of them listed here. This may not be completely comprehensive, but the U.S. Forest Service has a simple smoke screening tool available online, which I have the website listed here. Also, V-Smoke GIS. The webinar that was given last week by Scott Goodrick was not for the GIS. It was for the online version, which is very simple to use, but there is also a GIS version available if you have GIS. Also, PB Piedmont, which, as I understand it, is in the works right now of becoming online. They're trying to make it a little bit more user-friendly to be available online to the general public. So hopefully that'll be available to us soon. Also, the NOAA high split model, the blue sky model, and in Florida, there's the Florida smoke screening tool. And so you can look all of these up online, and each of them will give a description of exactly how to use them properly and what sort of information they can provide you. I also wanted to provide you with a few fact sheets that are available in smoke management. The Southern Fire Exchange has these available on their website. In addition to the fact sheets that I've already mentioned before, there's also fact sheets on nighttime smoke and fog on prescribed burns, also predicting smoke movement using computer-friendly models, and then smoke prediction with V-Smoke. So again, some of those smoke screening tools and just more information where you can learn about each of those modeling programs. So what factors are going to affect your smoke? Numerous factors will affect your smoke, but below is just some of the things that could potentially play a role in your smoke. Weather alone can play a major role in what affects your smoke. Fog, nighttime, wind, temperature, relative humidity, KDBI, etc. Also, topography. The steepness or flatness of the terrain will play a role in how your fire behaves, and therefore in how your smoke behaves. In the southeast, we generally don't have the large mountains like in the west. However, even small changes in topo will change how smoke behaves, especially when in combination with other factors such as wind. The amount and type of fuel will affect the amount and type of smoke produced. Also, the type of firing technique you'll use will result in different types of smoke. I should mention that there is, speaking of fire techniques, also a fact sheet recently put on the Southern Fire Exchange website on that from Dale Wade. The time of day could play a factor, as well as mop-up. The time of day, if you look at the Introduction to Prescribed Fire in the Southeastern U.S., which is produced by the U.S. Forest Service, pages 43 to 53 give full details as to the differences between daytime and nighttime smoke evaluation. Also, the size of the burn. The larger the burn, the more smoke it's going to produce, and the higher the likelihood that there will be multiple fuel types. So you should always consider the size of the burn in total acres, as well as the number of active fires at any given time. Also, the duration. The longer the duration, the more likely it is that weather conditions may change during the burn. Just looking at weather specifically, there are many tools available. The first one being NOAA Fire Weather, also EPA Air Now, the air quality observations and forecasts. As I mentioned, they also have a mobile app for that as also. The National Interagency Fire Center has smoke and weather forecasts available. This page is a portal to forecasted smoke dispersion and fire weather information. And much of the information looks at 3 to 7 days in advance based on meteorological forecasting systems. Some tools provide seasonal outlooks based on climatological data also. There's a Southern Fire Exchange fact sheet called Detailed Point Weather Forecast, and also a mobile app from NOAA called a High Def Radar. I believe this one is only available on Apple as of now, though. What fuel characteristics would affect your smoke? Looking at fuel, the type of fuel, fuel moisture and size, available fuel, the way the fuel is arranged, and then the amount of the fuel or the fuel loading. So one of the things that you could do to look at this is on the Surpass, smokeapp.surpass.org website, the mobile app that I mentioned earlier, there's a section called Fuel Calculator. And if you click on this section, it allows you to enter in the number of acres that you're going to be burning. So in this example here, I just kept it easy. I put it at 100 acres. And 70% of the available fuel is estimated to burn under the planned conditions. So depending on the moisture of that day or other considerations, that number could change. I just picked 70 for this example. And then you type in the fuel type. There's multiple choices available to pick from. For this particular one, I chose a medium load of pine litter, which comes up to 8 tons per acre. And these numbers came from South Carolina, the fuel loading numbers did, but they should be applicable to the entire Southeast. And then the fuel calculator provides a calculation for you. And so for that burn unit of 100 acres, your total available fuel to burn is around 560 tons for that entire burn unit. So if you're doing the class and you want to use this as an example for your students, if you called in your permit that day and they told you that that fuel loading was too high of a tonnage, you could ask your students, what could you do to lower this number? How could you make it lower? And some example responses could be, well, we could split the burn unit in half to make the burn unit smaller. There's several answers to that question that you could provide. So this is another example of how you could use this as part of your curriculum for smoke management. You could also provide your students with a case study, and I want to thank Kent Hanby from Alabama for providing me with this case study. He had a couple of them, and he has some excellent lessons learned over the years. And so this one was from Auburn, Alabama, and it was a stand south of and adjacent to a major road. The site was a 15-year-old planted longleaf and volunteer loblolly site. It hadn't been burned since establishment. He says that the wind was from the north and the fuel moisture was about 7. The ignition was completed by 2 p.m., but at 5 p.m. the wind suddenly stopped completely and the smoke had started spreading back out on the road. So given this scenario, you could ask your students, what would you do if you were in this situation? How could you mitigate this? How could you control this problem? And so what Kent ended up doing was that he immediately called the police and requested traffic control assistance. He had already had road signs out indicating drivers to slow down, that there was being a prescribed fire conducted and there could be smoke on the road. He had a truck parked at flashers on one end and had someone else do the same on the other end. And he says that traffic actually did slow down and stay in their own lane. He stayed there all night to make sure that the smoke didn't get any worse, but around 10 p.m. the smoke cleared out and didn't come back. So that's just one example of how you could use a case study. Perhaps if you ask your forestry agency, they might have some other examples for you to use if you'd like a little more state-specific example. You could also contact some forestry consultants to see if they have ever gone through a situation like this. And then down at the bottom there, I included a link to a website from Frames from the Smoke Committee. They have 2 other examples, one of which involved multi-vehicle car accident and another one which smoked out Atlanta. So if you go to that website or just go to their site and search for case studies, you could use those as examples as well. Here we have some additional educational resources. I just wanted to provide this if you go back and watch the archived version later. The Introduction to Prescribed Fire in Southern Ecosystems is a publication that just recently came out. It's used to be known as the Black Book, now it's the Orange Book. But that contains a lot of information, particularly there's a section on smoke. Also, the National Interagency Fire National Smoke Management Resources has a website that I listed there. The 2001 Smoke Management Guide for Prescribed Wildland Fire. The NWCG Smoke Management Guide for Fire and Wildland Fire. The Southern Forestry Smoke Management Guidebook. Managing Smoke at the Wildland Urban Interface. The NWS Fire and Smoke Mapping. And then finally, the Smoke Emissions and Smoke Portal, their air quality library. If you go to the Smoke Emissions and Smoke Portal, they have a plethora of information there for you to use. You could either use this as part of your course or as just knowledge for yourself to have going into the course. But they do have a lot of information there that you could definitely include as part of your course if you choose to. There's also some online courses that are available. The ones that I already mentioned, this course here that I've been discussing today, the Southeastern Prescribed Fire Training course. There's also the Basic Prescribed Fire Training course taught by John Weir in Oklahoma State University that's also available online at the campus.extension.org website. There's AgLearn online courses for air quality, and also a smoke management and air quality for land managers. And that last one can be found on the smoke website as well. So if you go to the smoke committee website, you would be able to, there's 4 modules there that you can go through, and it's a full curriculum as well. There's also some videos available on smoke management. On the Prescribed Fire Smoke Management Pocket Guide that I mentioned earlier, the mobile app, back in the end of it, there's a resources tab, and if you click on the resources and you go to the YouTube page, the channel is called Prescribed Fire Smoke Management Pocket Guide, and within that I include the 6 videos from the U.S. Forest Service, as well as 2 videos on smoke perception, and also the video on the test fire. There's also a webinar that was done back in 2011. This is available as an archived webinar on the Southern Fire Exchange website. It's called Using Smoke Prediction Models for Prescribed Burning and Planning. If you have questions or more information, or your students have more questions, you could direct them to any of these places. Extension has a community of practice, a prescribed fire community of practice. I've put the website there. They have a Ask the Expert section as part of their website. The Southern Fire Exchange also has an Ask an Expert website. And then the National Interagency Fire Coordinating Smoke Management has a website also that I've posted there. These would all be great places to go with more questions. By the end of this course, the training course that I've been discussing today, we're hoping that participants will understand that smoke can in fact be managed. We want them to be able to explain the factors that affect smoke. We'd like them to be able to identify, map, and avoid smoke-sensitive areas, and to summarize steps necessary to minimize smoke impacts. Also to incorporate smoke management considerations into a burn plan, and to identify any tools and resources available for smoke management. With that, I'd like to go ahead and take any questions if we have any. I believe we still have some time here, so I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right, thank you very much, Jen. It looks like we had a few people join us during the presentation. My name is David Godwin, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the Southern Fire Exchange, and we just had a presentation from Jen Evans, NC State Prescribed Fire Extension Assistant. So if you have questions or comments that you want to share with Jen or the audience, please go ahead and type them in the chat window now. Looks like we got our first couple of questions. John said, can the time of day affect the thickness of the smoke?
The answer to that is yes, the time of day can definitely affect the thickness of the smoke, and there's more information if you go into the orange book that I mentioned before, the Southeast. I think let me go back to that slide. I think I have the actual page numbers in there, but there's an entire description of daytime versus nighttime smoke, and it should touch on that. It's in the Introduction to Prescribed Fire in Southeast, pages 43 to 53. Discuss some of the differences between the daytime and the nighttime smoke evaluation, and that publication was written by the U.S. Forest Service. It is available online on their website, and I believe it's also linked to the Southern Fire Exchange website as well.
All right. We had another question or two. It looks like came in from Joe, and he's asking how long would the training curriculum take to present and finish, and how long would the smoke management curriculum take? So are we talking hours or days, or how big is this package once it's all put together?
So the overall presentation that's online currently right now, the Southeastern course from start to finish, which includes all 8 of those modules, is estimated to take well, the, going through everything itself would take 4 to 5 hours. However, we've gotten feedback from some of the other participants who have participated in the basic smoke management practices. It could take them anywhere between 6 and 10 hours, just depends on how in depth they actually really want to go into it. So we could see this really, it just depends on who is taking the course and how much more in depth they want to go into the resources. We're going to provide a lot of optional resources that they may or may not want to delve into. Once we get the prescribed fire videos completed, and those are going to be included as well, each of those videos are going to be about an hour long each. And so there's going to be 4 of those. Those will be combined into this curriculum. So I would estimate by the time that this is all said and done over the summer, it would probably take about 6 to 8 hours on average for somebody to complete it. Now, this is going to be an online, self-paced course. If you're just teaching the smoke management portion of that, the one for the curriculum that I discussed today, that one would probably anticipate to take about an hour.
So it sounds like it definitely varies. I'm excited to see those prescribed fire videos come out of NC State. I think that'll be a pretty neat product to see, and those will be integrated into that training that we could access through campus.extension.org. Is that right?
Yes, those videos will complete production hopefully by the beginning of the summer, and we hope to have them integrated as part of this course also. There's going to be the 4 standalone videos that will be available on the Southern Regional Extension Forestry website, which is SREF. And then those will also be condensed down to be included as part of this curriculum as well.
Very good. Well, let's see if we have any other questions come in. Doesn't look like it. It looks like we've come just a little bit before. Whoops, we had a question here from Lori. Can you elaborate on why SURPASS is focused on an integrated curriculum? Could you speak on that?
Sure. I don't have access to go back to my slides now, but one of the slides that I mentioned, there are several. Each of the states in the Southeast have their own smoke management guidelines. So we wanted to look at those and see what sort of topics were they covering. Were they similar? Were they covering different sorts of topics? And each state, since they have their own, prescribed burners don't just burn within their own state. Oftentimes they'll go into other states to do their burning. And the smoke from their fires doesn't stay within state lines either. The smoke will travel from one state to another. So we really wanted to make this an integrated curriculum so that when that happens, all of the best smoke management practices will be combined into one place and not necessarily just for that specific state where their burn is being conducted that day.
All right, let's go back over here. All right. Well, any other questions can go into the chat pod right now. And let's see if we can add here. It looks like we had some people join us during the webinar. If you joined us and you have not filled in your information, if you're seeking CFE credits, there's a new pod that you'll see there at the bottom of the screen. Please go ahead and type in your full name and the username that you used to log in as a guest on the webinar today. So thanks again, Jen, for your presentation today. Those of you who are still here, please take just a second and click on the link in the middle of the screen and give us a little bit of feedback on this webinar, and that'll help us to tailor our future webinars to better suit your fire science needs. Today's webinar was recorded, and it'll be on our Southern Fire Exchange YouTube page in about a week or so. So without any other questions coming in, looks like we're done. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and thank you, Jen, and y'all take care.